All right. So we are recording this meeting. It's the Tuesday, October 12th meeting of the statewide regional planning agency group. I'm Dawn Batiste. I am the current year moderator for the group. Ryan Niblock is on the line. He is our current year vice moderator. We are not going to be conducting overall introductions today. We are going to ask that if you're speaking to please introduce yourself when you are speaking, and please make sure you are muted if you are not speaking. With that, I will ask if there are any additions or changes proposed for the agenda. All right. Hearing none, we will go ahead and move on to item number 3, which is our approval of the meeting minutes from our August meeting. They were attached to both the draft and the final agenda that went out. Any comments or objections to the meeting minutes? All right. Did I hear somebody?
No, looks good. Thank you.
Okay, great. I will then consider the meeting minutes approved, hearing no objections. We're going to start off with the RTPA committee and other reports, and we will start with Jennifer Solis from Fresno COG.
Thank you for the introduction there, Dawn. I just have a brief update for the SHSP committee. The executive leadership meeting was held on September 16th, and they unanimously voted to approve to revise the goal of the SHSP to 0 fatalities and serious injuries versus the working towards 0 fatalities. And they also voted to approve adding the UCSD treads as a pedestrian focused advisory member to the steering committee. The SHSP team and the steering committee did recommend for the executive leadership committee to approve 13 proposed actions to include into the SHSP implementation plan and the action tracking tool. However, one of those actions did not pass at the executive leadership committee. That one action was a proposed bicycle action for the Pilot Edge Lanes Road. The SHSP team and the steering, or will work with the steering committee and the bicycles challenge area team to consider alternate actions for the pilot study. The remaining 12 proposed actions were approved unanimously. But just a few announcements. Cindy Utter is the new SHSP coordinator at Caltrans. We did send out the fall e-newsletter last week to the RTPA group, and it was focused on speed management. And then just to also highlight, the California SHSP pivot that we're working on was a recipient of the 2021 National Roadway Safety Award in the Program Planning, Development, and Evaluation category, and that was awarded on October 6th. But as always, feel free to visit the SHSP website for lots of great information, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. We're going to go ahead and move then to Patricia Chen for the TCC and HSIP.
Thank you, Dawn. Okay, I have picked out a quick few items to highlight, and I'm also going to send to Ryan a little bit more detailed notes. And if you want for the TCC, they also have notes that are available on the internet, but I will warn you, they're 12 pages long. So only if you really want to invest some time. So with the TCC, Transportation Cooperative Committee, it met on September 23rd. And we had a really good presentation from Lenora Graves on the Office of Race and Equity. And they talked about the 3 different organizational units that they have and the fact that they are working toward creating a coordinated equity resource tool. So it's going to be quite a bit of a process. They're looking for data and metrics that will measure success such as an engagement tracking tool and ways to capture outcomes from pilot projects. Also, there is an environmental subgroup of the TCC that is working on ways to improve processes. And they have a retirement, and so they are looking for additional person. And just, I'll get back to you on that one so you know who to reach out to when you have something that you want to get information into for them. And they are also, one more note on the TCC, they are gearing up to send out a survey to find out more issues where maybe some process improvement can be done. This is not just limited to environmental. It's in general for state and federal funding. So stay tuned for that. They're going to have an updated survey and, more input for the group to keep working on things. On the Highway Safety Improvement Program, a couple of quick notes there, because I know Caltrans is going to talk about a lot of things. So I'm trying to just pick the things that are either just so outstanding I have to say them, or that you won't probably hear. So the local roadway safety plan is now a prerequisite for applying for HSIP starting in cycle 11. So I think you cannot say that enough times. That has to be, we need to really be conscious of that and be getting those local safety roadway plans done for all the jurisdictions. Additionally, I would just pass on that they are looking at large roundabouts do not seem to compete well in the HSIP because of their high cost. And so they're thinking of focusing in a little bit on mini roundabouts to see how they perform and how we could assess those and see if that works out a little bit better. And then finally, Caltrans is looking at creating district safety plans with respect to HSIP. So the idea here is to provide an avenue for district staff to meet with agencies and discuss alongside the CHP, public health, et cetera. These will be consultant-led, 1 or 2 consultants doing the entire stage. Okay, so like I said, that's my highlights, and I will send something to Ryan that's got a little bit more in it. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Patricia. Can go back to share the agenda. The next item is the CTC updates, including STIP ITIP hearings, SB1 workshops, the ATP update, and the RECTAC update. So with that, we'll start with Teresa.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully everyone is doing well. Staying safe. It's really windy and cold now here, but I just wanted to notify everyone that the ITIP hearings are scheduled for November 1st for the North and November 8th for the South. The November 1st ITIP hearing will be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the 8th is going to be at 9 o'clock in the morning, from 9 to 11 on the 8th. As always, because it's virtual, I don't know if it matters north and south. It really doesn't matter, but you have 2 opportunities to speak on in regards to the draft ITIP. I have not gotten the draft ITIP. We will be getting it this Friday, so we will all be getting it this Friday. So just wanted to let you know, we will post it on the agenda. We will post an agenda, I'm hoping in the next day or 2, so that you can look at the link and how to sign up if you wish to participate in the ITIP hearings. And I just kind of wanted to let everyone know, because normally the hearings are scheduled way in advance, and for a variety of reasons we were unable to, because we thought we would be doing them in person. That's what my wishful thinking, but it didn't occur. So So just wanted to kind of give everyone the heads up as to those are going to happen. Okay.
All right, does anybody have any questions on the ITIP hearing schedule for Teresa or? All right, so we'll be talking a little more about the ITIP development update and the Caltrans update. So we'll move on to Matthew with SB1 workshops.
Oh, hey, Dawn. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yep.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm pretty sure most of you know me by now, but I'm Matthew Yazgat, the Deputy Director for SB1 Programming at the Commission. And when Dawn asked me to present, I did develop some talking points that have been informed by my team. So I've got a little bit of an update for you all right now. And if there's any questions or feedback any of you have, I'm happy to take it. So hopefully you've all seen at this point that we do have an information item on the October agenda, which is kind of putting to commissioners a bit of a preview of some of the proposals that commission staff have on the SB1 competitive programs this cycle. So I'm referring to the local partnership program, the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, and the Trade Corridor Enhancement program. This is not something we've done in the past, and because we do have several newer commissioners, I would say in the last 24 months, I think more than half the commission is new if we're going back that far. We did think it would be an opportunity to kind of set the stage and set the tone for some of the changes we have this upcoming cycle. So just a little bit of background or a bit of an update. So far, we've held 4 SB1 program workshops since late August. In these workshops, we've covered some overall program background, addressed some specific CAPTI strategies that are set out for each of the programs, and our plans for implementing those strategies, which we will obviously, I think, cover in greater detail in some upcoming workshops. And we've covered some additional items related to each program. Overall, I would say that these workshops have gone fairly smoothly. I will admit that we haven't had a largely robust dialogue as we might be used to, and this could be a result of a few different factors. I think that it's, trying to stay actively engaged in our new virtual workshop environment is certainly challenging. And if anyone has any ideas on how to make them a bit more active, engaged, we would be happy to take it. One alternative that we're exploring is maybe an alternate platform to go to, which would require us to procure a new system, which we're looking into, but it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion at this time. We also haven't started off with many large-scale changes, so I know that the bigger the impacts are, the probably more robust conversation we will have. And we're also in the 3rd cycle of these SB1 competitive programs now. So I would say a lot of the quote unquote rough around the edges issues have been worked out, hopefully. But I can still assure you that we'll have some worthy changes on the horizon this cycle as well. So overall, we do ask that each of you as very key stakeholders to the program, since a lot of your agencies are applicants and implementers of projects within the programs, we encourage you to participate and stay actively engaged in each of the program workshops throughout this process. If and when you have feedback, please provide it in a workshop setting if you can, and offer examples or issues and examples of issues and suggestions that you might also have. I want to kind of describe some of the new dynamics that I think we're experiencing. So new this cycle is a requirement that we respond to a lot of additional feedback and questions from some newer stakeholders, such as numerous advocacy organizations and staff, and sometimes commissioners directly. And we recognize that these newer stakeholders, or maybe new to the process stakeholders, haven't always been involved in guidelines development in the past. And so because they're not always familiar with the programs or the history of the commission, we are trying to take a step back and be a bit more methodical in how we describe some of the changes or or being a bit more thorough. And so we do ask that each of you be patient and flexible with us through the workshops because we have been asked to provide more context. And since we've been receiving a lot more feedback and suggestions than normal and input from new participants, if you'd like your organization's position to be considered, if you hear something that's kind of going in a direction that might be different than what you or your agency might want to consider, it is very important that you make comments during the workshops themselves. I know certainly we will accept feedback in writing or a telephone call if you are a bit shyer about maybe publicly giving your comments in a workshop forum. But still, I do think that in order for the changes to be true consensus driven, the conversation is important in the workshop setting. I would say one of the largest items we've brought into the table so far is regarding CEQA and NEPA and the deadlines in our programs. This is a proposal for all 3 programs, but I do think we had the most robust conversation during the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program workshop. So I just wanted to let you all know that Hannah Walter, the program manager for the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, does plan to follow up on this topic at the October workshop. Her October workshop is going to be next Thursday, and I'll give you the date in a moment. But she's received very specific feedback with concerns and examples from RTPAs, and she does plan to respond directly to this feedback. And I imagine we'll kind of follow suit in the other programs accordingly. And Elizabeth, I saw your hand go up. I'm going to just take, I will take questions as they come. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in the past, we really were very, very interested in being at the table when the workshops are held. We actually had to kind of divide and conquer with the small staff that we have and send people to different locations when they were offered in person. But I guess we're still really challenged with small staff, and we're in the midst of our RTP, SES update, the RENA update, and everything else. So we're finding it difficult to make when these workshops are held. And so I think it, unfortunately, we'd still certainly like the opportunity to be able to weigh in, when we can on, new guidance is developing. So I wouldn't want to see it precluded or less emphasis put on it just because we can't be at the meeting. And I understand what your purpose is so that it's more transparent. Everybody hears the same thing. But I still think we need an avenue. We really desperately need an avenue for, one, very quickly getting up to speed with what the new changes are, what's coming down the pike this time with an updated guidance. And so if there's a way that could be succinctly summarized and posted on the website, that'd be fantastic, or disseminated when you send out information regarding the up and coming workshops. Hey, these are the things that are really critical that are changing. We want you to weigh in on. That would be very, very helpful, because that will help us get focus on where we need to really, when we grab the draft, we can take a look at those sections. And then a vehicle for just providing our input, whatever that appropriate vehicle is when we're not able to participate, knowing what that is, that would be terrific. Then I think you guys have been recording those, right? Those sessions have been put on YouTube, I think, or some other.
We actually, I think we put our CTC meetings on YouTube. I believe we have been posting the recordings of the workshops directly to our website. So if you go to the workshop site, and all past workshops are still located on the workshop site, we do update those listings with the recordings of the workshops.
Yeah,
that
so
is
I think having the recordings obviously is really, really extremely helpful as well. So I just wanted to give you my 2 cents on that.
No, Elizabeth, I really appreciate and value the feedback. That is certainly not a concern only coming from our TPAs. A lot of our various stakeholders are, lightly resourced or thinly divided. We are making every effort we can to post materials as soon as we can. I can tell you right now that for the 2 workshops we have next week, the local partnership program workshop is on the 19th, which is Tuesday. The Trade Corridor Enhancement Program workshop is on Thursday, which is the 21st. The agendas and any additional material that we were planning on covering are actually currently on our workshops page. We just haven't sent it out through the distribution list because we were getting feedback from our clerk that we were maybe inundating our distribution list with emails, and that maybe some important messages that come out from from Central Commission activities are being kind of drawn out. So we've been trying to utilize the distribution list a little bit more. So I do encourage you to check our websites out, or the program specific workshops websites out. If you're looking, if you're focused on one particular program. But I can say that the agendas and the materials that, not PowerPoints quite yet, but the, because we agree with you, Elizabeth, we want to make sure that we're staying kind of in front of big discussion items so that, staff can clear off their calendars or make sure that they're represented if something of particular interest is being discussed. But again, like I said, we will still accept feedback in writing or a telephone call. We don't adopt the guidelines until we have a draft that we bring to the commission. So it'll be a 2-meeting process. We anticipate several opportunities to have stakeholders, heard on these changes. But when we first introduce the ideas, I think it's a good opportunity to get in front of the changes, or get in front with your agency's thoughts.
Right. Thank you.
Dawn, did you have?
No, I would like to just mention to folks that if you do have a question or comment, it is helpful, like Elizabeth did, if you use the raise hand feature so that it moves you up to the top and I can see that you have a question or an issue. So do we have any other questions for Matthew or comments right now? And Matthew, did you have anything else that you were hoping to add?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into upcoming items since they're included in the book item, and I don't need to be redundant. But there is one particular item that I wanted to get in front of because I don't think it's described in the book item, and I will talk about it a bit tomorrow. But it's the integration of equity and how it will factor into project selection among all 3 programs. So right now, I just wanted to tell this group, we're tentatively planning to have a standalone all SB1 program workshop to discuss this integration, so that we can be as consistent among the 3 programs as feasible. I don't have a time frame right now that I can share for when we might be doing this. But it's, we're taking a lot of ideas and concepts from, some of our RTPA partners that have put stuff out publicly, as well as we're looking inward with a lot of the work that our planning team has done to try and tackle some meaningful changes to our programs where we can, start to actually select projects based on some equitable outcomes. And I will also be on the agenda at the October 28th Equity Advisory Roundtable, introducing this concept to roundtable members. We do plan on working the roundtable into this process as well. So let me go through my talking points and make sure I covered everything that I considered. So just really quick, I know I mentioned 2 workshops next week. On October 19th, an LPP workshop. The material and the agenda is on our website now. Same with the October 21st TSEP workshop. And then October 29th, we have an SECP workshop, and we plan on having the agenda posted by the end of this week. And that's it. That was probably one of my longer updates.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move on to Lori Waters with an ATP update. Hi, Lori.
Hi, everybody. So I don't have a lot, but I have a few things to update you on. And then after I give my update, I'm going to turn over to Alika because she's going to talk about one thing specific. So upcoming for the ATP is we are having a virtual symposium October 26th through the 28th. We wanted to continue having the symposiums like we had 2 years ago. Unfortunately, this is all virtual, but hopefully people can still get a lot out of it. And the ATRC is sending out announcements and how to register for that. And then other than that, we are getting ready for the next cycle of the ATP with our workshops are coming up. The first one is on November 9th, and that is our kickoff workshop. And so before Alika talks about the virtual site visits, I just want to see if there was any questions for me.
So Lori, I think, there's been some interest in, the proposed augmentation from the governor's budget that didn't quite shake out. There, I noticed in the state and federal legislative item, it mentioned something about funds reverting to the general fund, but then somewhere else I had maybe seen or heard that there's still some potential when the legislature reconvenes to consider either a change to the current year budget or possibly funds in next year's budget. Is there anything that or can speak of related to that potential funding?
Yeah, so I'll say we are not giving up on it yet, and you might hear something at the meeting tomorrow. And we're still hoping that maybe in the next budget that there would be an ATP augmentation. And we still are proposing the 2 billion augmentation like our original proposal. And I think that there's still a lot of strong support and interest in it. So we're hopeful that it might still come through.
All righty. Okay. Any questions from anyone else for Lori before we move to Alika? All right. I'm not seeing
Thanks,
any.
Dawn.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Alika.
Thanks, Lori. So as Lori mentioned, in addition to the workshops, we're also going to be beginning the Cycle 6 site visits this November. So what we've done is we've created an online form that's going to be sent out to all of the stakeholders and all of our contacts this Friday. And essentially, we're going to be asking all of our interested stakeholders to use this form to schedule their site visits with commission staff. We are going to be available on Tuesdays from 1 to 3 p.m. and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each week beginning November of this year through February of 2022. All of these dates are listed in the form that will be sent out, and I'm going to be updating it periodically every time an agency schedules a site visit with us. I'll make sure to update it in the form just to prevent any sort of overlap. We are asking everyone to select between 2 to 3 dates of availability, just in case if someone else were to schedule something before you. Within the form itself, you'll all have the flexibility to schedule over an hour with commission staff. So if you have multiple projects that you'd like to discuss, you can either do so by selecting back-to-back time slots and get 2 to 3 hours with commission staff on a specific date, or if you prefer, you can always do it at different, on different dates, different months, whatever works best. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Alika on the process for the virtual site visits? Oh, I see Rachel has her hand raised.
Hey, Alika, so just out of curiosity, so these would be that the cities themselves would be filling out the form, or are you hoping that the RTPAs can kind of coalesce everyone around this, around similar dates within a certain region?
That's a good question. So it's kind of, we're leaving it open to you guys. If you think doing like a regional site visit would be more beneficial for your agencies, we're, welcoming that. If agencies individually would like to, have separate time slots with commission staff, that's an option as well. So we're kind of leaving it open to what works best for the agencies in the region.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Rachel. if some of the RTPAs like to be more involved, and if you want to do that, that's fine. We can do a group like we would in person. Either way works.
All right, anyone else? Okay, not seeing anyone. We'll go ahead and move now on. Thank you, Alika and Lori. We'll move on to Hannah Walter with an update on the road usage charge check.
Hey, Dawn. I am filling in for Hannah. She's actually briefing the chair of the Road Charge Tech, Commissioner Lee, right now. So
All right.
I will read some talking points she shared with me. So hopefully some of you know, or maybe not, recently the legislature passed a bill authorizing a new road charge pilot to test revenue collection. This is Senate Bill 339. And according to that, the commissioners or the Commission's Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee will be responsible to develop and design recommendations for the pilot by July 2023. Because we recognize this is going to be a lot of work, the Commission is requesting additional staffing resources in a budget change proposal to kind of keep up with that. And then the overarching recommendations will include topics such as which vehicle groups should participate in the pilot and a road charge rate. And if any of you or any of our stakeholders are interested in participating in any of the working groups that will be set up as part of this effort, please let Hannah Walter know, and I can drop her email address in the chat after this update. Other than the pilot, Caltrans continues to work with the administration on a road charge implementation plan, but we don't have any details on the timing of that rollout. And I do want to let you all know that the next Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee meets on October 29th with details available on the Commission's website.
All righty. Well, thank you, Matthew, for pinch hitting for Hannah. Does anybody have any questions on the Rec Tech update? I see Kenny with his hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry, I'm a little close. Okay. Thank you, Matthew, for that update. I actually had a question going back a little bit on the SP1 workshops. So I know that you've scheduled the save the dates through December. Right now, do you expect to continue that forward into January, February? And if so, when do you think you'll be releasing revised or new save the dates for those dates?
That is a great question, Kenny. We are definitely planning to continue monthly workshops through probably March, maybe even one in April. So I will get back to you. So I'm going to have to work with my team on some dates that can work for them. I don't know. Yeah, I can't commit to when we can get the save the dates out right now, but I would like to say we could have them out in the next handful of weeks. We have a lot of alternating commission kind of sponsored events going on. And we know that there's we had to move 2 congested corridors workshops to make way for the Pacific Ports Conference and then focus on the future. So we are trying to make sure we're catching varying events in advance. So, but I understand it's important to get that information out to you all as soon as possible. So I'd like to say in a couple weeks, we can at least share a December or a January date and maybe go month to month at that point.
All right. Anything else for Matthew? All right. Thank you so much for the presentations. We are now moving on to our Caltrans updates. We're going to discuss the final proposed ITSP, ITIP development update, California Freight Advisory Committee update, some SB1 reporting, SB1 cycle 22 development from the Caltrans SB1 coordinator, and then our local assistance updates and our policy and working group updates within local assistance. So we are going to start with Marlon or Scott, if they are on the line and available to talk about the final proposed ITSP.
Hi, this is Scott Sauer, so I'm here. Marlon, I think, has another meeting, so unfortunately, he's got many of those. So, I'm the lead for the ITSP. So it's a relatively quick update. We finalized the ITSP on October 1st. We met our early deadline for that. It's going to be presented at the CTC meeting. We have an agenda item for that on the 13th. It's posted on our website at this point, so feel free to check it out. If you have any tweaks or edits on it, and we're not going to change anything substantive, but you know, we do have typos, and I think Dawn, you've actually pointed out something on one of our maps. So feel free to contact me or Kathleen Hamley, who's also on the line here, and we can definitely work with you on that. The policies are all done this correct, but you know, we're not perfect, so there are some edits on that one. That plan is, of course, driving the decision-making process for the 2022 ITIP right now. And then, of course, the next step, once this, now that we've gotten the plan finished, Kathleen Hamley is going to be working on the ITSP addendum. And that's basically taking the policy level document and going into much more detail on each corridor, doing some more further analysis and coordinating with our districts and our partners to refine the strategies and improvements that are identified in the current ITSP and refine them a little bit more and make them more specific for the individual corridors. So I don't have a lot to prepare here other than we appreciate a lot of the comments we've received from the RTPA group, Rural Counties Task Force, various agencies, and we did a really good job. We did our best we could review all of those comments. We definitely did a lot of changes to reflect those comments in the final document versus the draft document that we had. We will be posting basically our response to comments on our website. We were focused on getting the plan done, so that's not out there yet, but we will put that on our website in case anyone wants to see how we did respond to each individual comment. I believe we had somewhere in the area of like 450 individual comments that we had to review. So all that information really helped us as we developed the plan. So does anyone have any questions? It's pretty much my update here.
Yeah, I noticed Patricia is unmuted, so we'll go to Patricia first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Scott. And I did ask some questions and did a comment letter. And just for this venue, I would just like to ask the general question, because I was looking through the STIP guidelines, getting ready for the cycle, and I had seen that active transportation projects are eligible for STIP funds. And I think I saw that specifically for the ITIP as well. And I just wanted to ask, given the way the ITSP is set up and the scoring criteria for the ITIP, do you think it's feasible for active transportation projects to be funded in the ITIP?
I think it's definitely feasible. It's something that we'll look at. It maybe responds. It's a little different than some of the other projects. It doesn't necessarily facilitate interregional travel, but if you can do the active transportation project that kind of separates the active transportation from some of the interregional travel to make it safer and more efficient for both modes, or all modes basically, that's definitely something we'll consider. So that's something that we will consider it. It can score good. Sorry, that's bad grammar there. I mean, my kids would be appalled at me. But yeah, it can score well. Just depends on the project and the location. So we're definitely considering them.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott.
You're welcome.
All right. Anybody else with questions or comments on the final proposed ITSP before we go into our ITIP development update with Rambabu?
Yeah, Don, this is Woody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just want to say thanks, Scott, to you and your team for so much outreach. I know the Rural Counties Task Force really appreciated it, so thank you for that.
I appreciate it too. I mean, we have certain assumptions and we think we know what you guys all need, but having the discussions with you really helped improve the document and with all of you basically. So I appreciate your input, but I appreciate your acknowledgement. So thank you.
And Kathleen as well. Thanks.
Oh, definitely. She's done a great job jumping into it. You know, in 2 weeks, done a lot of work on it. So you're going to be very happy with Kathleen as she develops the addendum.
All right. So with that, I think we will go ahead and move on to Rambabu on the ITIP development. If he's on the line.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay, Dawn?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So thank you all and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to give you a brief update on the ITIP development. As you know, Teresa mentioned earlier, October 15th date, that is the date by which date we need to submit the draft 2022 ITIP to the commission and also share with you all. So we are on track to do that. So we will submit our document to CTC by this Friday, but we also will post it on our website. As soon as we post it on our website, I will send out an email to the RTPA group with the link to the document so that you all get to see at the same time. More importantly, I want to thank you all. This time we have our meetings. We had a statewide meeting for the ITIP development, but also we had meetings with the districts and the RTPAs within the districts. So most of you have attended and provided input. So just like Scott, I also appreciate all your participation and guidance through this development process. So with that, I'm going to stop here and ask for any questions.
All right. Does anybody want to address the ITIP development at all? All right, Rambabu, I would like to say, thank you on behalf of the RTPAs around the state for the early outreach on the process. We really appreciate the communication and getting out there to the districts and involving the regional agencies. So the next item.
Thanks, Don.
I think Yatman sent me a note that he may have somebody else on the line to talk about the CFAC update, what the current activities from CFAC are.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Egan, and I work in the Office of Freight Sustainable Freight Planning as a Freight Performance Program Manager. So I have a really short update for the CFAC portion. CFAC, we do not have updates at this moment, and we're working to identify the date for our next meeting. However, we do have something that we are working on. On August 26th, the United States Department of Transportation released a request for information to CFAC for input into the redesignation of the primary highway freight system. Now, the primary highway freight system is one part of the National Highway Freight Network, which is composed of the primary highway freight system and its connectors, as well as interstates not on the primary highway freight system, which California really doesn't qualify for because we have quite a bit of mileage, as well as 18 other states on the primary highway freight system and the critical urban and critical rural routes. So basically, pursuant to FAST Act, FHWA is required to redesignate the primary highway freight system every 5 years. And this update allows for an increase of 3% of the mileage. So the current system is 41,518 centerline miles. So the new, based on the calculation of additional miles, it would allow 1,246 additional miles. Now, the redesignation is based on factors for consideration included in Title 23 of the United States Code 167D2E, which identifies changes in origins and destinations of U.S. freight movement, changes in percentage of annual daily truck traffic on principal arterials, changes in the location of key facilities, land and water ports of entry, access to energy exploration, installation, and production areas, access to other freight intermodal facilities, including rail, water, air, and pipeline, total freight tonnage moved on highways, significant freight bottlenecks, significant goods movement on principal arterials, including the consideration of global and domestic supply chains, and critical emerging freight corridors. And the reason I bring these up is if we were to submit changes and additions, we would have to provide a justification and supporting data that would identify this addition as part of one of these particular changes. So FHWA performed a preliminary assessment for these additional miles already, and they used similar factors and methodologies under state law, and they identified 268 additional centerline miles. So that reduced the amount of miles for consideration down to 960. FHWA also provided 3 options for these mileages for designating them. One was to provide equal allocation of miles to each state. So based on their calculation, it would give every state about 18 miles, centerline miles of additional potential mileage, because they would still have to provide the assessments based on the United States Code. The second recommendation that they wanted input on was, as I mentioned before, there are 4 separate parts of the National Highway Freight Network, and the one that was a state, interstate's not on the primary highway freight system. So FHWA looked at that, and there's 18 states in that category, including California. So one of their options is to accommodate those 18 states and provide them more mileage. So that would basically provide California with potentially 53 potential new miles, miles. And the third option was to add to the primary highway freight system any routes newly flagged as interstates since it was first identified. But this option, I think they've kind of ruled out, because that would, the total mileage, it would be 1,500 centerlane miles, and that's too many for, what's legally established. So on October 6th, Caltrans sent a recommendation to CFAC, because again, this docket and request for information isn't to Caltrans or any state DOTP, it's specifically to the freight advisory committees. And the recommendation included, responding that that the CFAC would likes options 1 and 2, either one, and we have no preference, and that we would like FHWA to actually designate those mileages. But in the end, we would like the opportunity California to review them and comment on them before they become official. So we sent this out again on October 6th, and we're waiting. Comments are due back to us by COB this Friday, October 15th. And we base these recommendations because there's a very limited amount of mileage, and the docket is, it's an extremely short timeline. And also we have currently 728 undesignated critical rural and critical urban corridor miles. So we're hoping to get those filled. So if you have any questions, please, I'm here to answer them.
All righty, Kelly, thank you very much. I see that Kenny has his hand raised, so go ahead, Kenny.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. Kenny Cow with MTC. I'm an alternate on CFAC, and I haven't commented on your list yet, but I think your recommendations are fine. I think option 2 actually might like a little bit better, only because we get a little bit more mileage, but ultimately, like you said, the CUFC, the CUFC and the CRFCs that we still have undesignated. I really like that process. I think it's really flexible, and I want to, as much as possible, advocate to keep those in our ability to designate those whenever we want or can. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mike?
Kelly, what did you say about the critical rural freight corridor designations? It kind of cut out when you gave that part.
Oh, I just said between both the critical urban and critical rural that we have 728 miles of undesignated critical corridor. I don't have right offhand, but I could get back with, the split, urban versus rural. But I suspect that a lot of the miles are rural.
Okay. Kelly, what's your phone number?
My number is 916 639 6373.
All right, great. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Well, Kelly, I really appreciate you coming to provide that update. I had seen the notice in the Federal Register, and it obviously is very important in the state to get our mileage designated and be able to participate in funding tied to these particular corridors. So we appreciate the update and knowing where things are with the CFAC on it.
Absolutely.
All righty. Angel, we have you up next to talk about SB1 reporting.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. And then the SB1 2022 cycle development.
Sure. So thanks for allowing me to speak a little bit today. My name is Angel Pyle. I'm the SB1 program manager for Caltrans. I apologize in advance if you can hear any noise in the background here. So we are currently going through a remodel, and today is a very active day in the house. So just want to apologize in advance for that, but all good things so far. So all good things. So there's just a couple of brief things that I wanted to mention. So first is a reminder of reporting requirements associated with projects receiving SB1 dollars. So this is specifically programs that are covered under the accountability and transparency guidelines from the commission. So as a reminder, those are ATP, LPP, both formulaic and competitive, trade corridor and congested corridor, and then also the shop, but we take care of that within the department, so you don't have to worry about that. So there are, well, what we've been noticing recently is a decrease in the reporting compliance, and that unfortunately can't occur. So please remind your folks, remind your brother and sister agencies, we need those reports when those are required. And so we're still doing quarterly reporting because that's the best way for us to track and monitor projects. But please be mindful of those reporting guidelines that are associated with the A&T guidelines. If you need help, if you have questions on reporting, or if you're not receiving the notifications, please reach out to either me or there's several other folks, program representatives within the department. We are happy to help. We can help work through any CalSmart issues. We can help work through notifications. We can work through all sorts of things, but we have to have those reports. And please, if at all possible, do not wait until the last day to report. If you could do that, I would, me and a number of program managers within the department would be very much appreciative. So I want to pause for a moment and see if there's any questions on that. Okay. Also, just so that everybody knows, there are ramifications for those that don't turn in reports. So just want to put that out there for everybody. So that reporting compliance is very important, and it is monitored very closely. So we do notice when projects aren't reported on, just so everybody knows. Also, a quick note in the LPP formulaic program. So what we've been noticing recently with a couple of projects, sometimes completion reports are submitted that have a different scope than what was programmed. Just so you guys know, that's also not okay. And there are ramifications for that as well. So just because they are formulaic dollars, please do not assume that there's not like a programmed scope or a specified scope prescribed with those. So if you have changes, we're happy to work with you on it. Just let us know. We just can't see it after the fact. So we've got to know about that beforehand, and then we're happy to work with you on those things. Any questions or comments on that before we move on?
All right, anybody? Let's see. I don't see any hands raised yet, but.
Okay. Also, just to note, some of the folks in the active transportation program, so Mary Hardigan and also Dancy put on a webinar last week, which walks through how to report in CalSmart. It was a great webinar. We had about 100 attendees the first day, and we had about 60 or so attendees the second day. I think that webinar was recorded. I can't recall where it's posted, but we can certainly send the link out. They walk through step by step how to report in CalSmart. So if anybody needs any assistance whatsoever, please feel free to reach out. Dawn was at that at the first session, and so anyway, so there are resources out there to provide any sort of assistance that folks need.
Yeah, and Angel, if that is recorded and I can get a link, I'm happy to make sure that gets sent out to the RTPA group.
Sure. Okay. All right, very good. So on to more fun topics. I know that the reporting isn't always a very fun topic, but it is necessary. So part of SB1 is accountability and transparency, and that consistent reporting is how we remain both transparent and accountable. Oh, I see Matthew has his hand raised. Okay.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand. I just want to back Angel up on this. I will agree with her. Reporting is absolutely not a fun or glamorous part of the job. But as the commission's accountability and transparency person, I guess, or manager, I don't know what my title on that is. It's very, very important to the commissioners. It's very important to my executive director. We are trying to be flexible when we have agencies that are not able to report on time. But after repeated efforts by Caltrans and commission staff to seek, reports from agencies, I can tell you my executive director is not very forgiving. So we are also a resource. My team is a resource if it's ever an issue. I just wanted to back Angel up on that. Sorry. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. Okay. So I think that's all I have on the reporting pieces. Again, folks know where to find us if they need any help. So Dawn, do you mind if I go ahead and go to the next item then, or?
No, go ahead and go to the next item. I think we'll have a little bit more robust discussion on this development cycle topic.
Sure. Okay. So first, for those of you that might be a little bit upset about some of the dates associated with Caltrans's internal process on the 2022 SB1 workshops, I am the person that you can blame. So I just want to put that right out there. So we do have some, I would say, more accelerated timeframes for the SB1 project nominations for the upcoming cycle 3. And even I have fur babies that are even excited about this. See, like I knew it would. See, Dawn, you were exactly right. It is more robust. So we are looking for project nominations and information on those project nominations in December of this year. And I know that that seems really fast. So before people freak out and throw virtual tomatoes at me, let me explain a little bit as to why that is. So first, we do take the nominations very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're putting together and putting forward robust projects that are in alignment with CAPTI and that are in alignment with the directions that, that the department is trying to go. And with that, that takes a little bit more time. The project vetting takes additional time. Also, we go through additional time with the project prioritization process. Hold on just for 1 second. Again, with contractors here, my dogs are trying to, it's really bad timing on my dog's part. Sorry about that. We do also go through a very robust prioritization process. And with that prioritization process, we do evaluate different parts of the projects. And we also are trying to get feedback from our stakeholder groups. And so we do take those prioritizations very seriously. And we do need additional time to be able to prioritize those project nominations. Another reason that we're looking towards an accelerated timeframe here is application development. We heard loud and clear from our partners and then also from our internal staff that we need additional time for application development. And so when we accelerate these timelines, what we can also do is allow that additional time for the application development and that additional review. Also capturing fatal flaws. So sometimes, like for example, we found during application reviews last cycle, we did find errors that we needed to have corrected before the official project application submittal. We were working through some things with the EPPR process. So we're trying to allow more time for that this particular round based on feedback that we got from the previous cycle. So with that, I am happy to take any questions, and I'm also happy to work with people on this. This is like, this is a fluid process. So just be mindful, not everything is like set in stone and such. So anyway, I'm happy to take any questions. And we also look forward with partnering with you on projects and such. So anyway.
So I'm going to go ahead and start it off, and then I'll
Sure.
move to Kenny, who's got his hand raised. But I think, I appreciate the need to get started with things early. I'm wondering, is there, some sort of a common schedule that can be shared with the regional agencies, first of all, and then what is the process for Caltrans districts to reach out? I know that some of our folks have heard from their district office kind of counterparts. Other folks, it's been completely silent. So I'm just wondering if there's more of a kind of a shared calendar and a shared process or something that.
Sure. So we absolutely can share a calendar. So we absolutely can do that. Also, we have developed an intake form. So this is where we're trying to improve our process from previous cycles. We're looking at various project information, which should be available at this point because their projects which will be nominated should be at a particular point even by now. Now, of course, there's certainly still a lot of work to be done, but a lot of the basic information that we're asking for, we're hoping is available at this point in time. But again, we can still work with everybody on that. So in terms of activities, we can certainly share our intake form. So this is basically what we're looking at, the project information that we're looking at. There's no secrets in it or anything like that. You'll clearly see alignment with CAPTI in there, and then also specific questions around goods movement and the freight benefits associated with potential trade corridor program nominations. So, but we can certainly share something, and I can get something to you within the next couple of days, Dawn, to send out to the group in terms of a schedule.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Kenny.
Hey, Kenny.
Hi. Well, thank you, Angel, for coming. I think I nominated this item to be talked about because I did hear from my district, and I checked with some other RTPAs and they hadn't heard the same information that I heard.
Okay.
So I'm nervous that this might be the first time that some of us are hearing about that, which leaves about 2 months for us to fill out that intake form. The intake form is relatively large. I did see a copy. I think there's like 60 questions or something. Maybe
Also, some of them are very basic questions,
yes.
though. Some of it's super basic information, like, I don't know, district, county, those types of things. So just keep in mind that some of it's very basic information. And we also understand that things can change, but this is a starting point. So.
Right. So thank you for sharing that. I do have some nervousness about it because, December 15th is almost a year before applications might be due. We're thinking maybe November of next year. That's in my head. So for our sponsors to be ready to be like committing, yes, this is what we're going to do about a year before applications is a little bit early. I know we weren't planning to do our process until maybe spring of next year when we get closer to the call for projects and when the guidelines are more finalized. So, I had asked Matthew earlier about if we're going to be doing more workshops early next year. That means that the guidelines might still be in flux. And one of the big questions that might still come up is, are we going to be a 2-year cycle or a 4-year cycle? And that will definitely influence which projects will be applying or are not. So I do have a concern that the December 15th date is very early. I did want to mention, you said prioritization is a big deal, and I definitely appreciate that. But I believe prioritization just needs to be done by the time of application submittal. So that's, again, potentially November of next year. So I'm a little bit nervous. I just, the timeline seems really stretched, and I would like to see maybe a little bit more time. I mean, I'm thinking maybe 2 months to February of next year would be really helpful for us to do that regional process with our sponsors and to work with our districts to come up with really good projects that we are very confident are ready for application come call for projects summer of next year. So I would love for you to take that into consideration, especially given that our processes on the region might not fully align with the Caltrans, and maybe they don't need to, but I would love for them to be a little bit closer so that we can, have some better economies of scale, et cetera. So thank you.
Sure. Well, thank you certainly, Kenny, for those remarks. Let me chew on that a little bit and see what we can do. Because again, not everything is necessarily set in stone. Let me see if we can compress anything and go back and talk with a few folks. And then I'll probably give you a call, but then I'll also communicate any results, of course, to Dawn so that can be communicated more broadly to this group. So thanks, Kenny.
Okay, Patricia, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my voice to Kenny's. Kenny, thank you for bringing that up. And Angel, thank you for coming and talking to us today. That's always a difficult decision for us too about what we plan to apply for. And totally agree with Kenny that it helps to be a little bit further through the guidelines to get an idea of where things fit, and so anyway, yeah, another couple months, even 3 months, March would be really great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Patricia.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Mike Woodman?
Yeah, this is Mike Woodman with Nevada County Transportation Commission and also chair of the North State Super Region. I also echo Kenny's comments and concerns regarding the timeline. I mean, you're talking about, I know MTC is a large agency in a large region and have to collectively figure out their projects. But I mean, for our smaller rural counties, we're talking about, staffs of 5 and 4 people and, having to work with our districts to pull this information together. So, additional time, thought I was muted for a second. Additional time would definitely be appreciated. So just echo Kenny's comments.
Sure.
All right, Adrian?
Oh, actually, 1 second. So sorry, Adrian, just one moment. So one of the things that I wanted to go back to something that Kenny said. So I know that like with the commission timelines, if anything with those timelines changes, then we will also adjust our timelines accordingly. So just want to let you know. So there still could be some fine tuning associated with that, depending on when applications are due in each respective program. So just wanted to put that out there as well. But I definitely hear what you guys are saying loud and clear. So go ahead, Adrian. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, good afternoon. Adrian Cardoso, OCTA. I just wanted to agree with the RTPA representatives who've already spoken. And I did have a question for you. I think we're one of the agencies that I don't believe we've been notified. So who is it at the district? What position is it that we're supposed to contact to work with on this form?
Sure. So we work with a variety of folks in the districts. So sometimes we work with the single focal points, but also the planning deputies. So the planning deputies and some of the planning staffs within the district should also have that information available to them. But again, totally open door here too. So I can certainly provide you with that information, or if you have any questions or anything like that, we can always help.
Thank you. Thanks.
Alrighty, and then Woody.
Oh, yeah, I guess I don't mean to be a dead horse, but just want to continue to support what others have said. You know, a lot of the small rural agencies have, you know, Mike said 4 or 5 people, some have as few as 1 or 2 folks staffing those agencies. So any additional time would be greatly appreciated. And I've also heard from a number of our rural counties that were not aware of this and are concerned about that short time frame. Thanks.
Sure. So I also, can I ask a question then too? So like, I mean, you know, application development takes time, right? And so part of what I heard last cycle in terms of feedback is that we did not allow enough time for application development. And of course, we don't want to spend time developing applications for projects that may not go forward. And that's part of where we really want to, you know, have a lot of that time and care in, you know, making the decisions on, and they're tough decisions too. They're not easy. And I know it's even tough within the regions and then tough within, you know, larger metropolitan areas too. So it's not easy. But in terms of application development, we don't have to do this here, but if you want to just send me a note or even send Donna a note offline, and if you could communicate that to me or something, you know, what amount of time is good for application development? And I always struggle with this because even when I saw some of the draft applications last year, like there were a few times where we saw maybe some fatal flaws in the PPRs. And so we want to work with folks and make sure that, you know, we're doing like this kind of interim check-in too, to make sure that, you know, we're in good shape and that all of the information is accurate and in compliance with the guidelines and such. So anyway, just food for thought. Just want to put that out there in terms of like what the sweet spot is in terms of the amount of time for application development too. Rachel, go ahead.
I really like that idea, and I'd be curious if CTC or Caltrans or RTPA group could do some sort of like mini survey to see how much time people have been putting into these applications as well as the ATP applications, just to get a better sense of how many hours everyone ends up, you know, putting into these things. They can be very robust. I think we had like 4 staff working almost full time on our application last time for several months. And, you know, I'm just curious if that's how, as well as consultants helping out, and I'm curious if that's how what other folks' experience has been.
Sure. I can certainly look at that inside the department, but I will defer to Dawn in terms of the local piece on that. So.
Yeah, I mean, ATPA might be a little harder thing to get a hold of because, you know, we need to be maybe reaching out a little further than our internal RTPA group here. But certainly for the other program applications the RTPA group has been working on, we could get some sort of a poll out just to see what it's been looking like, and maybe by program, because, you know, it may vary quite a bit. So I see Sarkis has his hand up. Was your, do you have any other questions, Rachel? Sorry, before I move on to Sarkis. Okay.
Everybody, good afternoon. I guess I'm just curious. So I think some of the regions want to go through their own local process to see which projects they want to submit for. And then this process that Angel is talking about is the Caltrans process that for you guys to submit for whether you apply on your own or with another region, right, Angel? Okay. So to answer Rachel's question, you know, we've applied for every cycle of SB1, and I actually appreciate the process that Angel is doing, because it does take a lot of time to put these applications together, especially on the benefit cost part and then any new elements. So I hear my other regional peers' concerns, but I think at least for the Caltrans process, it's helpful for us to know how we're proceeding with the 3 programs. So that's my input.
Sure. Thanks, Sarkis. Also, Dawn, I don't want to take up too much time on your agenda because I know that there's a number of things that are still on deck here. So I am, of course, available for questions, comments, concerns, anything like that. You know, you can just reach out to me offline. I can put my email address in the chat, but I don't want to take up any further time since I know that there's other items on the agenda as well.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that because I was watching the time and we probably should be moving on to D. If you could go ahead and put your contact information in the chat, that would be fantastic. And then folks can reach you.
Will do. Appreciate the time. Thanks, Dawn.
All righty. Thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to the local assistance updates. I see Sujai is already up for the August redistribution and OA update. And I didn't know if Dee wanted to mention anything first, because we're going to start with August redistribution and the OA update, then talk about the training day debrief, and then we'll move on to the policy and working group updates on agency certification and the project monitoring tools.
Hi, Dawn, it's Dee. Hi, everybody. Just a
Hi.
few notes. Yeah, just a few notes before I pass it on to our local assistance team. I cannot express more appreciation. Gosh, I don't even know where to begin with the appreciation with my team and the RTPA team working together to meet quite a bit of successes throughout this past federal fiscal year, if you will. A few the team will be covering the success with OA and August redistribution. I know a lot of work went into it on all fronts. And then the meeting and in fact exceeding the inactive rate. I know that was a huge push. And then some training successes. And I know our team will go over some of the training day debrief, but at a high level here, 600 attendees. I thought, you know, it's huge. I think well over more than we thought who would attend. I think also with that, it just definitely speaks to the demand and the need for future training. And we do have those planned. Clean California, really quick. We've had 2 workshops, and I'll tell you at the last one, I believe there was like about 1,100 who registered, probably close to 800 who attended. So we are, trying to expeditiously stand up the program. The other few notes that I have that I wanted to share is some technology improvements, which I know Felicia will cover, but we've been on a quest to, you know, think through what is the minimum viable and then what is that long-term horizon for establishing data governance and reporting improvements. So really quick, I know Felicia's going to touch on the project data tool. We've also built an audits database, which is real integral internal to us for tracking and assisting our agencies with audits. I know it's not a fun topic. And then lastly, just echoing Angel and Matt's plea for reporting. We definitely need everybody to report early. I say that because our team needs that lead time to review upwards of hundreds. Just in the ATP portfolio alone, you're talking about 500 reports. So any help that we can get there is much, much appreciated. And I think I won't take any more time than that. I'll pass it on to the team. So again, thank you to all.
All right, thank you, Dee. All right, go ahead, Sujaya.
Okay, hello everybody. Since this is our first meeting in the new federal fiscal year, I'll start with congratulating the regions for successfully delivering 100% of the OA for the federal fiscal year 2021. The September OA report is not posted yet, but it should indicate the usage of $1.37 billion in OA. That includes $147.3 million in OA received from August redistribution and $24.1 million carryover OA from the 1920 federal fiscal year. We were also successful in completing the obligations that depended on the urban STBGP transfer. These were held till the very last minute because the money needed to be moved in the FEMA system, but it happened in the last minute, and we were able to obligate anywhere between 12 to 13 million of OA through that. And this is the first time that this pilot effort has been approved, and it's the first time in the nation that officially approved it. Implementation in partnership with the regions and the Highway Bridge Program had entered into loan agreements with regions to loan STBGP apportionments to the bridge program. But given sufficient projects in queue to use ROA, we did not need to use those loan agreements. So those loan agreements are void. That's the update on OA. I want to get a little bit into August redistribution. When we requested August redistribution, we did that based on our projects in queue, and we asked for 53 million. But the Office of Federal Resources made available 147.2 million to us. We were able to utilize all of that money. But I wanted to get a little bit into the process of the August redistribution because I've had several questions and I've kind of delayed responding to them because I wanted to address the group in this meeting. So July 1st each year, we do a data poll of all the projects in our queue, whether it's district queue, headquarters queue. And prior to that data poll, we send a request to the districts. We send several reminders to the district asking to create E76s, establishing all the projects that need to be obligated in that particular federal fiscal year. So July 1st, we pull that data, and based on that, we determine the need for August redistribution OA. And that's the number we provide to the Office of Federal Resources along with the project list. But OFR considers projects on its site and then comes up with a comprehensive list, which is the request that is submitted from the OFR end. Eventually, when we get August redistribution OA, we get roughly 36% of it, which is the local OA share. Now, the amount that we requested almost always has not matched what we've received from OFR. It's been higher. Maybe it could be lower in the future years, I don't know, but it's typically a different number, a higher number. And then begins this mad scramble to try and fill that gap. So this year, 53 versus 147, right? Almost 100 million over. And then we look at the projects in queue. Now, I've had questions on what is the August redistribution list? Can you share that list with us? The list is changing because even though we pull the data on July 1st, if you submit an E76 after that, if there is OA available, we want to accommodate it. So we revise that list literally every other day towards the last month or the last 2 months. And then also it depends on whether the submittals are accurate and complete. Towards the end of the federal fiscal year, there's a lot of requests for exceptions, pending co-op, so hold the project in queue. FTIP amendment that hasn't gone through, environmental cert that's still pending. So we're constantly reprioritizing our list, and so I couldn't release a fixed August redistribution list. And with all these exception requests, there's also the challenge of, okay, we need to use the OA, so if I decide to hold a project in queue, let's say that's a significant obligation, then I'm jeopardizing another project, even if it's a smaller amount, if it has all the submittals, just because it's submitted later. So it's constantly that evaluation of risks. And that is the challenge that I kind of want to bring to your attention. When we use 100% OA, I know it's a success, and we kind of, I don't want to forget about these challenges that we faced while reaching that point. So this fiscal year, I want to come to you prior to the August redistribution drill and ask you for more engagement to work with me on the strategy for August redistribution. Because if we don't use up all of our OA, then the question is where does the fault lie, or how can we improve the process? And I think we don't have to go there if we do effective planning. So I want to engage with the regions more this year, and then ask that you dictate the strategy to me so I know which are the right risks that I'm taking. So just wanted to convey that, but we can discuss this more, and I will schedule August redistribution meetings sometime in June, so we're well prepared for our August distribution this year.
All right, thank you, Sujaya.
Another quick comment on the OA BMP policy. I know the regions have engaged with me with the BMP committee. Thank you very much for that. The outcome from that is a revised policy memo. My target date for sharing that with the group is October 18th. This revision is going to allow for opening the OA pool earlier if the OA utilization is low. It will also increase accountability on the agencies for submitting obligation plans on time. It clarifies some of the deadlines related to authorizations. It allows for going negative on apportionments, and it will also include references to 2 new processes. One is authorization before allocation, and the second is the urban STBGP transfer. And the BMP committee will continue. We're going to look at larger delivery issues and not just OA management. So that's it for me. I will share these bullets so you can look for the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Sujaya. I think, you know, having watched this cycle from, you know, multiple perspectives over time, my earlier career in local assistance, working with, you know, Caltrans in a district delivering local dollars, and now working with an RTPA. Yeah, I've seen a lot of different aspects to this issue. One of the things I'm actually curious about is, do all of the district local assistance engineers have like the same process and understanding for what they are willing to put in the queue in the electronic system and when? Because on occasion we get, you know, until it's perfect, they don't build it. And so we may be missing things in the pipeline when you do that pool, depending on the timing. And then this entire issue just brings to mind the, you know, the overall, with overall delivery in mind. We had a project, it had received a STIP allocation, then a time extension, and then we came back, and by the time we were actually ready to list and the full package got submitted, the OA and August redistribution was done, and it was a statewide program, but rather than moving it through as AC, it's just been held. And so now we're waiting for the system to open for money to be available, but our clock is still ticking. Our CTC clock is still ticking to award. And so, you know, I've mentioned it before, but it is something that I would like to maybe kind of keep in the parking lot and be able to address at some point with the overall state managed programs, the ability to find a way to program them appropriately so that you can move those as AC when the OA is out, so that the listing and advertisement of those projects can keep moving forward.
Yeah, each project is unique, so I wouldn't want to comment here on a particular project. We should probably talk about it offline. But in terms of submittals, this year specifically, because the OA utilization was so slow in the beginning, we encouraged the district to just create an E76, whether or not the submittal was complete. So in fact, our biggest challenge towards the end was having a lot of projects with incomplete submittals and constantly negotiating on those. So we've kept that open this year, but hopefully it's a good practice to have complete submittals come through.
All right. So other folks with any questions and comments on the OA update? All right. I do want to thank you so much for putting, oh, is that you, Patricia? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I was fiddling for my unmute button. I just heard over at the very beginning, Sujaya, of what you were saying. And by the way, thank you for taking the time to talk about this. I know we're in a hurry, so I'll hurry up. I just heard you say that the local assistance share is 36%, and I've always heard about the 60-40 chart before. And so I wondered what the 4% gap is.
Roughly, I can give you the exact numbers. I'll add bullets, so you see that in the minutes.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you again, Sujaya, and we do appreciate the group, you know, that you put together to look at the policy, and appreciate all the volunteers who worked on that as well. So we'll move on to the training day debrief.
Hello. Kelly Hobbs here. So thank you, everybody, and welcome to today. So when we first started planning Local Assistance Training Day, was way back in February of last year, and this was Yvonne Garcia and Dee talking together about a training that we would develop, and we didn't know what it would look like. We didn't know what we would be covering, what topics. So Dee and I talked a little bit about it. She asked me to take it on. So what my group started doing was, working with the other office chiefs in trying to develop some Caltrans topics, ideas that we could share. But then what really started it was we sent a survey out to all the partners, and thank you everybody that responded to that. And we got back a lot of information about what topics everybody wanted us to cover. And so we put together a course that included, up to the minute concerns that the partners have. And, there was a lot of information to cover in the short time that we were doing. We didn't know if it was going to be a full day, half day, over 2 days, but we chose a 4-hour format. Felicia and Shajaya's offices, with Felicia in the lead, really put together a good program and discussing all that stuff about programming and the financial aspects. We also did some presentations with our Office of Guidance and Oversight and with the Office of Environmental. So as we got near the date, we didn't know how many people to expect to this. So we came with an idea that we'd have about 150 people when it began. We were going to have it on WebEx, but then we decided to go with Sac State, who provided a great platform on Zoom. We started off with a potential to have 300 people join us, and within the first day we had 280 people sign up. And with a cap at 300, we started getting a wait list that was over 150 people. So Sac State changed it into a webinar format, which is what we ended up doing, and we had 600 attendees. That 600 people came from local agencies, consultants, RTPA groups, MPOs, you name it. We had a little bit of everything there. And it was new hires to directors. It was, we really had a really good turnout that we weren't expecting. So it was our very first one, but it pretty much went off without too many issues. We had very few technical issues. So, that was great. In our evaluations, one of the comments that we had was that we didn't provide the PowerPoints or the presentations prior to the event. So that was one of the big things that people commented on. So we're working on that stuff for the next one. We had the typical comments that, for some people it was too fast, for some people it was too slow, for some people it was, a lot of information that didn't apply to them, but then for others it was like, I want more. So what are we going to do? Well, to alleviate the PowerPoint issue, we will provide a copy of the PowerPoints if it hasn't already been provided. I don't know, but the video has been posted for the event, so I'll post a link to that if you haven't seen it. We are working on the Q&A. We had about 300, I think about 300 comments and questions and answers. We're developing a Q&A with Peter Anderson, who was one of the lead presenters. And so we're trying to get that into a usable format. So that'll be posted along with the video and the PowerPoints at the same location. And that will be done through with Sac State helping us to do that. Going forward, we are working on doing another presentation. And Don, we haven't talked to you about this yet, but we're looking after the first of the year. So that'll give us time to close out everything for this calendar year. If we can get something going in February or March timeframe, that'd be great. We are looking at, how we set this up, the format that we do. There were a lot of comments that people wanted breakout sessions. We did have a lot of comments about the Q&A and how it was working. A lot of people were asking questions, and there was a lot of information flying back and forth. So we were trying to answer everybody's questions as best as we can. So we're looking at how we can, with Sac State, on how we can facilitate better Q&A. And we are looking at perhaps, some people asked for, hey, can you spread this out over a day or two, or have, multiple sessions? And working with the breakout format, we may be able to do a more, a larger event with multiple tracks going at the same time. So there's a lot of energy for this. Great success. We had a lot of people, like I said, over 600 people, and most everybody stayed on the entire time. So we didn't put a lot of people to sleep like I might be doing now. But anyway, with that, I'll, before we open it up to comments, Dawn or Dee or anybody else, Yvonne, if you have comments about training day and going forward.
I would really just like to thank everyone for all the work that went into putting it together. I heard, really good comments and responses, from our local agencies and from our regional staff here. And, it was very, very greatly appreciated all the effort that went into it. So, and Yvonne, Felicia, for really getting us off to a good start. In getting the ball rolling and making this happen. I see, well, I don't know if Dee wants to add anything now, but we do have Elizabeth with her hand raised.
Yeah, this is Elizabeth Hahn with Stanislaus Council of Governments. I have I'd like to make some recommendations regarding the next training day. Who can I contact? Who would be the best person to relay that to?
Dawn, I can take this one and feel free. I'll put my contact information in the comments. It's kellyhobbs@dot.ca.gov. But my office, environmental compliance and outreach, is working with the other office chiefs to put it together. Dawn, feel free to forward any comments that you may receive to me too.
Right. It might be, I don't know how the other regions feel about it, but it might be, kind of a nice idea to, based on the earlier survey and what we've covered so far and, kind of what's coming up in priorities. If we want to do, another survey, if you've narrowed down to some topics, but, want to kind of figure out priorities, maybe we can do, another smaller survey off of the original priorities that were gathered and what's being considered for the next.
Yeah, we'll be planning a survey for probably next month sometime.
Okay. All right, anybody else with comments, questions on the local assistance training day? Yeah, feel free to reach out to me as well if there are topics in your region that you're hearing of that you feel really need to be addressed.
Thank you, everyone.
I think Felicia, you're up next. It's policy and working group updates.
Yep, and I'll be quick. So the agency certification, just to give you an update where we're at. So we had 5 components: training, application, monitoring, certification agreement, and recertification. In the certification program, we have removed one of those items, the certification agreement. We're going to roll that in with our PSA. We're always looking for how do we make it efficient, not cumbersome. So I like that, using a process we already have. So the remaining items that we're working on now is the application. That's what we're focusing on this month. We're meeting with the other programs and offices such as right-of-way, environmental, DBE, and finalizing what requirements, what submittals does an agency need to submit, who's going to review them, what's the process. So once we get that finalized, we'll roll it out to the subcommittees and the districts for their comments. Also this month, we're going to start working on the training package. So that's a big component of it. So training package is coming. Monitoring, that's the next item on the list. So I'm going to roll it into that. So the monitoring tool that we started out earlier this year, we have a vision. As Dee mentioned, we've got this big vision, but how do we make everything happen with what we have? So it's a pretty big effort. So right now I'm focused in on how do we get a product right now. We're also working on what's our long-term, how do we make it sustainable and shift over to that long-term vision. So the monitoring tool is designed to help the agencies manage their projects, number one. So how do we get that information out there? How do we get our information to be transparent and they can use it? The other use of it is for us to manage our program. So how do we measure performance on ourselves and how we're doing? The third use for that tool is the agency certification program. So that is how we're going to monitor the health of the agency and how they're doing in the certification program. Again, we don't want to duplicate efforts. So we're going to use that tool for that as well. I am happy to say that the PED portion of the tool is finished. So it is posted online. I will put the link in the chat. You should see a blog post come out this week. Encourage agencies to use that tool, use it. Let me know what you think, any improvements, because the PED tool kind of sets the stage for the rest of the tabs, the rest of the dashboards that are going to go in that tool are going to follow the same model. So we want to make sure that it is usable. This tool can be downloaded into a spreadsheet. I know that was one of the requests from the MPOs, RTPAs is, hey, we have a spreadsheet. Can we put this data in ours? So it's downloadable. It's also printable. We do anticipate updating the PED information monthly. So that's a big step for us, is to be able to get this information a little more timely, not our real time that we're shooting for, but we are still working on the tool. Our next step is the inactive tab, which we think is going to be a game changer for not only the agencies, but internally to the division, because inactives is a big deal. I know that's not on the agenda, but I want to bring up a thing on inactives. Thank you to everyone who invoiced. Encourage your agencies to invoice. We met our 2% goal. Actually, we were at 1.51%. So that's like a really big success right there. We're starting off this quarter a little high, and not as high as normal. But what I wanted to convey is that we are going to do the same process for the inactives that are 24 months or greater without reimbursement, that have an unexpended balance of 50,000 or more. You will see communications on that within the next 2 weeks. We will send out the letter, the list, the blog post, so everyone will know that these are a big deal. Right now we have 30+ projects that are already over 24 months that will be on that list. And again, it will require a justification, a cost estimate form, if the agency can't invoice. So it'll be strict requirements. Those will be a little more looked at a little more critically. And if it's not approved, we will de-out those funds. So it's kind of important. Again, we will do outreach with the districts. And I mean, by outreach, we did a lot of outreach with the districts. They're probably tired of hearing from us, but we're trying to improve the processes and help the agencies get those projects moving forward. Again, so I just wanted to throw that out there. That's all I had. So if you have any questions, let me know. I see Elizabeth has her hand up.
Sorry to bother you again. I for some reason the chat function is showing up as disabled. I don't know if that's for the entire meeting or it's just some quirk with my computer, but you were mentioning you were going to add a link to the chat box. Is that working?
Oh yeah, no, it says disabled on my end too. So I can send that to Dawn.
I'll work on this.
Okay, and I'll email it to her and she can email it out as well. So
yeah, and then the last fellow that spoke, he said he was going to provide his contact info. And if you could, Dawn, if you could also provide that, that would be terrific. Thank you. That was regarding
and
the.
My apologies. I did see that was disabled. Hopefully it's enabled now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I provided my contact information in the links to Ryan.
Okay. All right, we'll make sure to also get those out, with the notes. I'll try and send a follow-up with all the contacts. All right, so other questions for Felicia? All righty. Seeing none, I thank you for the efforts. Thank the TCC for all its efforts to move forward all of the project monitoring tools. I think that they're going to be very valuable and useful for the regions and for us to help you, help our local agency staff as well. So we are ready now to move on to our next item, which is our FHWA updates. So we have on the agenda the continuing resolution and August redistribution, as well as an update on the FSTIP findings and the meetings that are being held with the RTPAs and MPOs. And we have Paul and Antonio here.
Hi, Don.
Hey, Paul.
All right, so it says continuing resolution in your email to me, Don. You said federal legislation. So do you want to
Yeah, I figured you'd just give us an update. Sorry, I put it this way, but I guess the legislation and the continuing resolution would be helpful to hear about.
Right. Well, I can make it really brief because probably half people on this call know more than I do on it. I know it's closely followed, and I know we've got a very limited amount of time. So as you know, Congress didn't pass the IIJA by September 30th. So they had to punt and extend the FAST Act through October 31st. Interesting in the FAST Act extension that they directed FHWA not to distribute the FY22 apportionments to states before October 15th. That's the first time I've ever seen anything like that in extension legislation, but it's there. FHWA is planning on figuring out the obligation limitation amount the week of October 18th. So we anticipate being able to sign project approvals, in our financial system and increasing, doing modifications to existing authorization obligations sometime the week of October 18th, fingers crossed. Just to let you know, just in case something happens and Congress does not extend the FAST Act, we actually have enough money in Treasury to be able to reimburse all existing obligations. So have no fear, even if FHWA is not working after October 31st, we have a few people in headquarters that will actually be continuing to be processing those bills to reimburse Caltrans. So that's good news. And just kind of an interesting aspect of our program, the continuing resolution has no impact on FHWA, at least not, we can operate for a long time. We need a reauthorization act in place to continue to operate. We do not need a continuing resolution. So when the rest of the government gets shut down and we have a reauthorization act in place, we actually continue to come to work. We just don't advertise it much. So I think everybody's still got their fingers crossed for the IIJA to pass. I'm not sure what kind of number crunching everybody's done here. The formula funds for FY21 for California was around $4 billion. Doing just some quick projections, it looks like if the IIJA would pass, that amount would go up to about $5.74 billion. Of course, that's before obligation limitations. So you kind of got to take that amount and multiply it by about 90, 92, 93% or something to get the actual amount that will be provided. And really, I think the big beneficiaries of the IIJA is bridges, because there's a new bridge replacement and repairs program. And of course, there's a EV charging station program. It looks like California get about $800 million in the IIJA in the bridge replacement and repairs program. So that would be huge for the locals. I mean, just be huge. And then there's a number of competitive programs, bridge investment, economically significant bridge discretionary grant, major projects that will deliver substantial economic benefits to communities, discretionary grant, and then a discretionary grant for EV charging stations. So California traditionally gets about somewhere around 10% of the discretionary grant program. So if you total that all up, we might get around $6 billion per year if the IIJA passes. Of course, it goes up every year, and last year would be over $6.5 billion. So fingers crossed. I think that would be really beneficial. Now, as far as August redistribution, Sujaya, DLA, they did a nice job in talking about that. I'm not sure if I can add anything. The total August redistribution this past year for the entire nation was $4.2 billion. California got around 402 million. So, the competition is always between whether California is going to get the most or Texas is going to get the most. And I think we lost this year. But anyway, does anybody have any questions about any of the federal legislation, August redistribution, anything along those lines.
All right. I'm not seeing any hands yet. I imagine the next topic may be,
Right.
you may get a few more.
Yeah, yes, the first part of this was a softball, and the next part isn't, right? So, so the federal planning finding corrective action. So I had some specific inquiries about whether the process for suballocating based on population to an intermediary group was acceptable. In other words, can the NPOs suballocate to RTPAs or counties or something like that, and then the counties and RTPAs follow the federal requirements. And we inquired of our legal staff, and there was a resounding no. So that's that is prohibited. No suballocations below the MPO level based on population. Or, you know, in the federal planning finding, what we cited was a Q&A, and that we could have provided stronger support for that. There's actually a regulation. I can send it out so you have it in meeting notes, but it's 23 CFR 450-326M that, and I really kind of hate to quote it, but it essentially says that any procedures or agreements that distribute suballocated STBG funds within the MPA, predetermined percentages or formulas are inconsistent with legislative provisions and shall not be used unless they can clearly be shown to be based on consideration required to be addressed as part of the metropolitan transportation planning process. So, you know, and I know that's not good news, and, you know, I'm fully aware of the challenges and what's been happening. You know, we're not ignorant of what's happening. You know, when apparently the process has been going on for a decade, 2 decades or something like that, and I clearly understand what happens then. The cities, counties, RTPAs, you know, it becomes a standard source of revenue that you plug into your system, and then you budget that, and you know, follow the federal requirements for project selection from there. And, you know, our job is to look to make sure that federal requirements are met. And unfortunately, that suballocation based on population or any predetermined formula that's not based on planning requirements, you know, simply isn't allowed. So all I can say is I apologize that, you know, that it's been allowed to happen for 20 years or whatever it's been, and then there's a sudden change. But that's where we are on STBG suballocated funds. And I know that, believe me, I understand the concerns and the hand-wringing that happens as a result of that. But, you know, our hands are tied, you know, that we're simply following federal requirements. If there is a desire to have that changed, I think everybody sitting on this phone call knows exactly how that process gets changed. Those people who make the rules need to change the rules. So I know that's not great news, but does anybody have any specific questions or comments on that before I move on to CMAQ?
Not seeing any hands raised yet, so maybe we cover CMAQ and then.
Dawn, we have a question in the chat.
Oh, there was a question about, can you repeat the CFR reference?
Yes.
Please.
23 CFR 450.326M.
And thank you, Antonio, for popping it in the chat as well. Thanks, Paul. And thank you, Ryan, for pointing that out to me.
Right. And believe me, we are more than happy to receive letters or position papers, you know, to further explore, send up the food chain. It's not like Antonio and I have a philosophical issue with it. It's just, it's our job. And so if anybody wants to further communicate that, send us additional information, ask for, just communicate further, please feel free to. All right.
Oh, we have a quick question from Mallory Atkinson.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. Mallory Atkinson from MTC. I was just hoping to ask Paul and Antonio a question about this, and maybe you'll get to it after the CMAQ one, but reading off the 326 or 450 326M, I think we're still struggling at MTC to understand what cases can be made to demonstrate that any sort of suballocation could be shown to be based on the considerations required by our federal planning process. And I think that's an area where additional clarity from FHWA would be helpful. If there are cases where MPOs have or could use suballocation to address the specific requirement of our planning process, what are those areas? I think that's just my question. Thanks.
Oh yeah. And it's a great question, because you are correct that there isn't anything in that regulation that absolutely prohibits suballocations, right? It doesn't say you absolutely can't. It describes some of the reasons why you can't. So it'd be a matter of going through planning regs and figuring out, but I think an obvious example would be using TPM performance measures for suballocation process potentially. We obviously have the safety performance measures, bridge condition, pavement condition, congestion, we'll have GHG out there. So those are obvious metrics that could possibly be used for suballocation. Now, I don't know if Antonio has heard any, and please feel free to speak up, Antonio. I don't know of any states or MPOs out there across the nation that are using an approved suballocation process. I just, because obviously you're asking, okay, is there a best practice out there that others have? I am unaware of that. And I'm not sure, Antonio, if you reached back to see and heard of any.
No, so you're correct. I know, I think it's been about 2 years now since we did the MTC certification review, and we posed that question to headquarters, and the response at that time was no other organization was doing that. But then the other part of that was the MPOs they're being sub-allocated from the state. And so the MPO by itself wouldn't be able to even make that request. The state would, because, and actually in California, it's not a state and MPO application process. It's a state process, and then it's sub-allocated down. But to answer your question, 2 years ago, there was no MPO in the country that headquarters knew of that was doing that. So, yeah.
So, just to
Excuse Paul, I just want to jump in for just a moment because I recognize a lot of people are going to have to jump off this call in just a few minutes.
Right.
I'm happy to continue this discussion. I just wanted to point out a couple of things for the folks who are going to need to jump off of the call. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 7th from 2 to 4. It will also be virtual. We had some other business noted on the agenda that we will hope to get on the agenda for December, including RTP guidelines and any potential future updates to those as a result of the cap tie, as well as looking at the shop development cycles and complete streets elements. And so those will be on for December. And I just wanted to mention that for anybody who needs to jump off. And then go ahead, Paul, we'll get back to you.
Okay, and I'll try to make this real quick. It's CMAQ's a lot easier, but just to finish that conversation that Mallory started. If Caltrans contacts FHWA and wants to put together a working group or us to provide technical support in potentially developing some ideas as to how, you know, a sub-allocation process could potentially be put in place in California. We're more than happy to participate in those discussions. All right, so CMAQ, a lot easier. You know, there was just a couple of MPOs we found that were giving the CMAQ funds to transportation agencies, whether it's county, RTPA, or whatever, and essentially allowing them to be the organization that selected the projects and essentially give it to the MPO, and the MPO had no ability to change the project, change scope, give it its thumbs up, thumbs down. And so the project selection process is strictly for the state and MPO. And so bottom line, the MPO can't give those funds out just as a discretionary grant and say, here, you just figure out where to spend them, and then we'll put them in the tip. However, I think everybody can operate within the required framework and get to where they want. Because essentially, you just can't make the public involvement process for the tip be a sham. You know, I mean, and the MPO's ability to select and improve projects. But there's no problem with the MPO telling the entities that here's a chunk of CMAQ funds. If you can find a good project, let us know, and you know, we'll roll it up and, you know, go through the normal tip public involvement process, and you know, we'll get it approved as long as there's no objection, yada yada yada. You know, and I'm fully aware of how the public involvement process goes for many tips. I'm not aware of that. So I think everybody can use the CMAQ funds very similarly to the way they're using them now, but there certainly can't be, you know, a written documented process that says this MPO is going to give these amounts to these entities. They're going to select projects, and the MPO's got no role in project selection. We're just going to roll them up in the tip. So it's kind of straightforward. Anyway, so I'm not sure if how clear that is, but I hope that you understand that I don't think we're far off. And I think a lot of the MPOs and entities are probably, the way their processes are functioning right now, are well within the guidelines. And Tony, if you want to flesh that out at all, please do.
Yeah, and I guess for those who we did meet with, those designated MPOs, this is why we pay a lot of time to explain the project selection criteria that you must have. It's not that your process was outside of, I think, the regulatory requirements. It was just without the official project selection process, we cannot verify that it is. And so that's why we spent so much time talking about why MPO must have project selection criteria for those CMAQ funds.
All right. So I think we can open it up to questions and comments now. Paul and Antonio, if you don't have any objections. All right. Does anybody still have comments or questions after the explanations that have been provided? I see Peter DeHaan.
Yes, hi there. So thank you, Paul and Antonio. It really helped, I think, to hear your explanation of all this. I think there's a lot more. It sounds like there's a lot of work that'll have to be done to flesh this all out. But the question I have is more for Caltrans. I see Mohamed is here, and so it's been mentioned that Caltrans is about to issue a response to FHWA. And the question is, to what extent has Caltrans, since we're supposed to be having this is supposed to be a partnership with Caltrans and the MPOs and the RTPAs, to what extent has Caltrans vetted, I guess you can't necessarily have people read letters before they're signed, but to what extent has Caltrans vetted what they're going to say in that letter with the MPOs? Because I believe Caltrans was meeting with the MPOs. I don't know, Mohanad, if for someone from Caltrans is.
Yeah, hi, Peter. This is Mohanad Al-Jabiri. Well, the planning finding, they came back in April of this year. And we've had some internal discussions, and as well as with the MPOs at the CFPG meetings. And this has been a discussion for a while that we have talked to all our partners about it. And as you know, normally, when we have the FSTIP approved by FHWA, it's just normal that they submit to us planning findings, and we usually respond. Now, in this case, we have been given a deadline of October of 2022 to meet these or to do the corrective action. And a lot of our MPOs have already started working, or some of our MPOs already started working on the development of their 2023 FTIPs. So there's really not much time to spend on just having all these discussions. So what we did is we met individually with all the MPOs in the state, whether they sub-allocate or not, because we know that all the MPOs, they have stake in the approval of the FSTIP. And if we do not meet or do the corrective action, then this will jeopardize the approval of the 2023. So that's why we really wanted to get moving on that. And we met FHWA and us with all the MPOs and talk about it. Now, our response is really not going to be anything different than what we're going to be doing, is that we just have to correct this action. We're not doing anything extra. We're not doing anything that is out of the ordinary, is that we're just, talking to our partners about it. And that's what was going to be in the letter. So
all right,
we're just trying to comply with the corrective action.
Yeah, so basically the letter is going to say we're talking to our partners about how to
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That's exactly what it's going to say.
Okay, I saw Elizabeth, but now she's dropped off. So we have Rick Carter next, and Patricia, wave at me if you still want to in the queue. I thought I saw a hand. Okay. Go ahead, Rick.
Thanks. You can hear me, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. A couple of questions and thoughts. You made a reference to the 23 CFR 450 326M, and it makes a reference to individual jurisdictions, which I think you somewhat addressed in saying you went back and your legal had a resounding no. But I'm a representative at Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. We are a state recognized RTPA within an MPO. And in state process and in state law, the state allocates STBG funds directly to the RTPA. And is that something that you considered or looked at in terms of it's not the MPO doing the allocation, it's the state itself under state law?
You want me to answer it, Paul, or do you want to?
Go ahead, Antonio.
So Rick, there are two different types of STBG. One is the over 200,000 citizens MPA or TMA MPA, which SACOG is one, as you know, but then the other one is the state pot of money. It is my understanding, and Mohanad could correct me if I'm wrong, that with the state pot of money for that under 200,000, they then sub-allocate that to transportation commissions or organizations such as yours. That is not inconsistent with the regulations. I believe the regs actually states that for those pot of monies, the state DOT can use those funds in any part of the state based on the state process. And so we recognize that as being a state process. What the corrective action is for is specifically for those TMA funds that are sub-allocated by regulations to the MPO.
Under the state regs where the RTPA exists within the MPO, those STBG funds come from the state to the RTPA. It's not the under 200,000. It's just that share from the MPO. That's a state reg, which is the big question we have with this, because it's a state recognized process, and I don't know where the sovereignty of the state fits in with the rest of the the federal process and the federal regs.
Right. Yeah, I would say that would probably be a conversation that we would need to have with Caltrans before we can answer that question, since you're talking about the TMA portion of the STBG.
Right. It sounds like it's in conflict with the federal regulation, and if it is, the supremacy clauses that the regulation is the one that is applied, not the state law. But anybody can, like I said, feel free to write anything down to vet it with us. I mean, we have no objection to digging into details that you think we may not have considered or anything. I mean, we're definitely want you to do that so you feel like it's been fully addressed and everything that you think needs to be considered has been considered. So please feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks. And I do have a question for Mohammed as well. Have you received anything within Caltrans management on a desire to basically make changes to accommodate, I think, the desire of a lot of people on this call in terms of the regulations are what they are, but it's not to say that they don't change. Has there been any interest from Caltrans in working on that? Because from what I heard from you, it was simply, we're going to work with the partners to comply. Is there interest in trying to get regulations changed?
Yeah, and this is something that we have not started the discussion on at all, simply because really we don't have that much time to have these discussions. We have a schedule to comply with the corrective action by October of 2022, which is the time that the MPOs submit their FTIPs to the state, their new FTIPs. So if there's going to be any discussion, probably, we're going to have it, later on. But right now, we really wanted to start working on this so that we don't jeopardize the approval of the FSTIP, the 2023 FSTIP.
Thanks.
And going back to Peter DeHaan's question, that letter has not been signed yet by the director, so it's still, being it has not been signed. So once it's signed, we'll distribute it to everyone.
Alrighty, I see Woody Deloria has his hand up, and then Patricia.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, Paul and Antonio. The two of you know we've been in contact quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. This is certainly of concern to us, being another RTPA within the SACOG MPO boundary. My only concern is that the federal guidance, and perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps the decision made by the attorneys at FHWA don't take into consideration, or don't understand, maybe take into consideration is a better phrase, the unique characteristics of having these RTPAs within these MPO boundaries. Because in conversations I've had with the two of you and others, it appears that they are treating RTPAs just as they would a city or a county. And you know, my concern is that losing that programming capacity for some of these smaller RTPAs within an MPO boundary really can impact them negatively over time. And I would argue that we do follow a very structured process based on that federal guidance, and the MPO ultimately does make that decision. We're not foolish enough to submit projects that wouldn't be approved through their TIP process or integration into their MTP SES, because they are partners with us in that project selection and approval. Jose Luis has been on numerous meetings with EDCDC over the years in deciding which projects get programmed CMAQ or STBG. So, I just think there's more nuance here that the larger federal attorneys might not be recognizing. I'm not at all insulting their intelligence. They're far smarter than I am. So hopefully we can continue to work on that. And Muhammad, hopefully we can work on that before the October 2022 deadline, because I'm concerned if we simply comply at this point, trying to then get the horse back in the barn after that fact is going to be much harder. So appreciate everybody's time on this. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
No, Woody, I appreciate, and I'll make this real brief. I think probably the consideration, and Antonio, free to weigh in. If it's suballocated to that RTPA, that means within that MPO boundary, that amount of money cannot be used on any projects by anybody else other than the entities that the RTPA is, allowed to allocate those funds to. And I think that's the main sticking point. That it's restricted to just that group. So, but I understand your concerns, Woody, and like I said, we will continue to discuss this.
All right, Patricia.
Okay, so I realize that, and this is not my area, I have to say there's other staff at LA Metro that works on the federal things, but it just occurred to me, we're in a tight situation. We're already working on the FTIPs for the next cycle. And it just reminded me of a movie I saw called Stick It. Cute movie. I recommend watching it. Anyway, in this movie, the gymnasts were in a competition, and there seemed to be a high level of disagreement among the gymnasts about how the scoring, they all agreed to not be in agreement with how the scoring was going on in this competition. And so what they decided to do was to withhold their performances and simply have one person go forward in each category. And then that person automatically won because everyone else forfeited it. So they basically controlled the competition. And I'm just wondering if something like that would work, like, let's say in the SCAG region, let's say LA has about half the population for the region, and we just put in applications for projects that added up to about half of the funding, and everyone, so forth and so on. Somebody has 20%, somebody has 10%. Would that work to get an FTIP through for this cycle?
We probably need a lot of details on that.
Well, it was a 2006 movie.
We certainly don't mind considering innovative approaches. If Caltrans wants to approach us with ideas that they think have merit on how to apply the process and meet the federal requirements while at the same time meeting the goals of the RTPAs. and counties, obviously. We're willing to listen to any innovative approach that Caltrans wants to bring to us.
And this is Mohammed Jabari. In our discussion with the MPOs, we're saying that really your project selection criteria has to be well thought out process that will really allow you to do some of the things that you want to do within your region. It has to be MPO-wide project selection criteria. And what FHWA and FTA are telling us is just you cannot assign certain percentages of funds to these areas. So I think really the emphasis and a lot of thought has to go into a well-designed project selection criteria for both programs, really, and a process that has, I think, goes a lot of discussion within the MPO region, so that we get you to where you want to go.
All right, I see Mallory has her hand up.
Hi, thank you. If I could ask one more question, and thank you again to Paul and Antonio for being here to share the latest of your thinking on this, or FHWA's thinking, and to answer our questions. It's really helpful to have you in person to ask these. You'd mentioned, Paul, that FHWA is welcome to hearing proposals or proposed interpretations of the guidance and how it might be carried out in a region, and vet that internally to see if that flies with your interpretation. But then you also mentioned that would need to come from Caltrans, and I understand that for the planning finding on the FTIP, that would make sense for that to come from Caltrans. But if it's specific to our corrective action, is FHWA open to getting these proposals from the MPOs directly, since these do deal with how our TMAs are programming STP and CMAQ funds?
Yeah, let me try to take a stab at this, please. Not interpretations, and I know we had this conversation a couple of years ago. Our legal team has already interpreted the regs. What we will be open to is kind of hearing that innovative thought process behind it, as Paul said earlier. Yes, you are free to reach out to your liaison if you have any ideas, but we still want to run that through Caltrans because you all are a subrecipient of Caltrans. Your MPO program is a subrecipient of Caltrans Metropolitan Planning Program. And we want to keep them in the loop as much as possible because they are also the ones that are advocating for you all. And they are actually the ones that we are meeting with a little bit more than you all. And so they're a little bit more knowledgeable of what's going on as well. And we want to keep it that way so that they can advocate for you all.
Right, so it's almost like it doesn't matter. If you send it to Caltrans and they send it to us, we'll coordinate with Caltrans. If you send it directly to us, we'll coordinate with Caltrans and respond. Just be transparent. Woody sent a letter to FHWA, and we're going to respond to that, but we'll coordinate with Caltrans. So, we just want to make sure that we definitely don't want to make decisions or operate independently of, Caltrans, the recipient of the federal funds. So, any response, no matter, or any inquiry, no matter where it comes from or how it gets to us, we'll closely coordinate with Caltrans and then respond back.
Okay, thank you.
I see Pablo has his hand up now.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Antonio, for letting us comment on this. I just have maybe a suggestion, given that Caltrans has to October to respond or address the corrective action. Some of the MPOs like SCAG have already produced the FTIP guidelines for the 2023 FTIP update. And I was wondering if maybe we can extend this corrective action for the 2025 FTIP, given that by the time Caltrans responds, SCAG will be deep into the 2023 FTIP release and submittal to Caltrans. It's just a thought.
Hey, Pablo. And I think this question came up in the one-on-one. What I would say is send that request to Caltrans, let them vet it, and then let them send it over to us. I don't think today is a day where we can actually answer that question.
Thank you.
All right, so we're about 25 minutes over. I appreciate everybody who stayed, Paul and Antonio. I appreciate the robust discussion for the benefit of everyone else who participates in the RTPA group but may not participate in the California Federal Programming Group. I believe most of the RTPAs or MPOs, at least the MPOs, do participate in that group. And I believe this issue has had some robust discussion with Muhammad and Abhijit on that side of the house. So I encourage you all, if you aren't the rep to the CFPG, to make sure that, you're providing your thoughts or input or getting up to speed with your representative to the Federal Programming Group. And if I don't see any other, oh, yep, I see James.
Hi, good afternoon, Dawn and everybody. I just want to say just the one takeaway from this discussion that I'd like for you to take away is that Caltrans has not adopted an official position on that subject. So continue to share your thoughts, share your ideas, and we'll definitely continue the internal discussions, but we don't have an official position on it at this time. I just wanted to be sure that everybody understood that as we're concluding this topic. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all for staying. Oh, I see Sujaya.
Yeah. Comment. In response to Patricia's question on where is the rest of the 4%, I added a comment to the chat. That should explain it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for staying over and oh, wait, Mike Woodman. Sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, thank you, Paul and Antonio. Just kind of one final thought on the CMAQ issue. Understand, FHWA's interpretation of the regulations, but the way that, California has this process set up between the MPOs and the RTPAs, these MPO areas and their boundaries are large areas with multiple RTPAs under them. And in essence, even though it's one non-attainment boundary, you have multiple airsheds. Like in the foothills, it's a different airshed than down in the Sacramento region, for example. And the structure that's set up with the competitive processes within the regions actually ensures that, you have CMAQ projects that are benefiting all of the parts of the different non-attainment boundary. So, definitely hope we can have continued discussion and find a solution, because California is unique compared to the rest of the country, and the MPO RTPA structure is unique, and we need to find a solution, whether we need to update the regulations, but hopefully we can find a solution.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think the point that you hit really affirms why it's so important to really communicate with Caltrans, especially if you were a RTPA that we talked with and receive a list of instructions, because they're taking all that information, they're taking all the different things that is unique to your particular area and trying to communicate that to us in a way where it fits within the limitations we have. So if you have been doing that, continue to do that. If you haven't, I will really encourage you to, have those conversations with Caltrans. The other thing I do want to remind everybody with CMAQ, the corrective action is somewhat different than that of with STBG. With CMAQ, it comes down to whether or not you're doing the assessments before decision-making and where the decision-making is actually happening. and not really the sub allocation thing as it is with the SCBG. And so as I think Paul said it really best earlier, there may be ways to look at your region and kind of determine, hey, can we put things here and there as it relates to CMAQ to, you know, move towards whatever air quality or congestion goals that you have in those particular regions.
All right, anything else, Mike? All right, I see James has his hand up again.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, Don. I just want to say that I agree with everything I've heard. And I just want to remind everyone that at the end of the day, it sounds like it could be a legal issue. It sounds like. So again, we encourage you to share your thoughts, your ideas. We're definitely going to have those conversations. We definitely want the engagement. But at the end of the day, it just in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, but it sounds like a legal issue. And I'm not really sure how much influence or how we can help shape that or frame that any differently. I just want to share that with the group to help manage expectations as we move forward. And thank you. Now I'll stop, and I promise I won't. Thank you all for listening.
It's 4:30, so I'm going to call a hard stop.
All right.
And with that, if you have any, you know, additional comments or questions or concerns, as I said, reach out to CFPG or the Caltrans contacts. If somebody really doesn't have an email or know who to contact, let me know. I hope to post the recording of our meeting by Friday this week. I can't commit to getting it out tonight, but I appreciate all of the participation. And with that, we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.